If I can just ask all the panelists to get themselves ready, we're going to be going online in about 10 seconds. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Chondy. I'm the director of the Atlantic Association of Applied Economists, or the abbreviation AAAE is what we usually like to refer to ourselves as. And we are very pleased to be able to host today's session. I know some people have not yet joined in, but they will hopefully join us as we go. The AAAE is a group of economists in the business and policy community that meet on a regular basis for professional development and primarily through a luncheon series program, usually in Halifax. We also host our annual student panel every March, and some of you may have applied for that this year's panel. We have just been selecting the participants for that this week, and we're looking forward to seeing that four young students come and present before the AAAE later this month. I'm also the Director of Research with the Atlantic Provinces Economic Council, also known as APEC. APEC is an independent charitable research institute based here in Halifax, and we are pleased to be able to support and host this session on behalf of the AAAE. Today's session is designed for both undergraduates and graduate students in economics in Atlantic Canada to raise your awareness of career opportunities for economists in the region. Specifically, we'd like you to learn more about the types of opportunities that are available for economics graduates in Atlantic Canada, to give you a better sense of what economics graduates actually do and what economists do on a day-to-day basis, and then also to give you some guidance as to some of the things that we look for as employers of economists. And as we have economists throughout Atlantic Canada working in different organizations, and as we have students studying at universities across Atlantic Canada, we thought the best way of doing today's session was actually through a webinar technology. So joining me today on today's panel, we have David Emiro. He's the Regional Director of the Atlantic Regional Office here in Halifax for the Bank of Canada. We have Thomas Storing. So David is part of the federal government. We are part of the nonprofit research organization. And then we have three representatives from the provincial departments in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI. So Thomas Storing is the Director of Economics and Statistics at the Nova Scotia Department of Finance and Treasury Board. Todd Selby is a similar position, the Director of Economic and Statistical Analysis with the New Brunswick Department of Finance. And then Nigel Burns is the Director of Economic Statistics and Federal Fiscal Relations in the PEI Department of Finance. So those are the five panelists that will be speaking today. And the plan for today's session is we will each take 5 minutes to talk about the opportunities in our own organizations and the type of work we do and what we look for. And after we've done those 5 presentations, we will then open this up for Q&A. So at the top of your screen, usually you should be able to find a chat function. This is what we will be using for the Q&A session. So if you can just send your questions via chat, ideally just to myself or to all the panelists. Don't send it to everyone because all the other people watching will be able to see your questions. But just send us your questions. If it's for the general panel, just send it to all of us. If you have a question that's specific for one of the panelists today, just indicate it's specific for New Brunswick or specific for Thomas or specific for myself. We'll make sure that they get to answer that specific question. So hopefully we'll have plenty of time for all your questions today. And at the end of today's webinar, which is being recorded, it will be available afterwards. If you want to go back and review any of the slides or hear any of the comments again, we will be sending you a link to the recording. And after today's session, we will be sending you a short survey. We just want to get your feedback. This is the first time we've done this type of session, and we just want to make sure that it was useful and to hear your feedback for anything we can do to make it more effective going forward. So that's the plan for today's session. You will get to see my colleagues and fellow panelists shortly. But let me just begin by talking about APEC, the Atlantic Provinces Economic Council, and the things and the type of things that we do. So we are an independent research organization. We have a mandate that's focused on the 4 Atlantic provinces. So we do quarterly economic monitoring of all 4 Atlantic provinces, tracking things such as employment, unemployment rates, consumer spending, exports in each of those provinces, what's happening in those economies. We do our annual economic outlook and forecast for all 4 provinces. So we give our forecast for GDP growth, for employment, and we present that at a conference held in each of the Atlantic provinces. That's a half-day morning conference. We also have our annual inventory of major investment projects. Again, this is tracking many of the large investment projects like the shipbuilding project, like the Muskrat Falls hydroelectricity development. This is our analysis of some of the big investment projects that are coming, very helpful for people in the construction industry, for engineers and others looking to look for the project leads. And again, we have an event associated with that. We also now do an annual pre-budget fiscal analysis, looking at the fiscal situation in all 4 provinces, giving our recommendations. We also do a federal budget commentary the night of the federal budget to show the implications of that particular budget for Atlantic Canada. We do short reports on various topics. We've just released one earlier this year on immigration, looking at immigration trends, integration and wages of immigrants, retention rates. We've done reports on greenhouse gas emissions in terms of climate change, exports, employment and wage trends, a whole host of topics. And all those will be available for you to preview those topics on our website. And then we do more in-depth research reports. One of the most recent ones we released last year was on interprovincial trade barriers, but we've done reports on the key labor issues facing Atlantic Canada, international trade, transportation and global value chains, foreign direct investment, demographics, and a number of economic impact studies for specific industries. So anything to do with the economy in Atlantic Canada, we have probably written something on that as part of one of our regular publications or one of our research reports. So what are the opportunities for you to work at APEC? We actually have 2 regular positions that we advertise. One of those is our annual Economist intern program. This is a 12-month position that begins in September of each year. This is available to a master's student, someone who has finished their master's program. They don't have to have work experience, so you don't have to have 1 to 2 or 3 years experience. This is available for you straight out of your master's program. And it is a great training opportunity. We do provide a lot of on-the-job training that take your academic skills and training and put them in a very much applied setting, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a few moments. This position is usually advertised towards the beginning of the year. Hopefully all of you have seen an email going out advertising this position through your university. Applications are still open until next week, the 9th of March, and you can go to our website to get more details if you're interested in applying for that particular position. We also have our regular summer students, where we usually hire 1 to 2 summer students every year to come and work for us for 2 to 3 months, sometime from mid to late April through to the end of August. Again, this is open for people entering a master's program or their final year of their bachelor's degree. Occasionally, for a really superior student, it might be someone entering their 3rd year, but typically a 4th year undergraduate or someone entering a master's program. Again, it's a great opportunity and a great way to gain work experience. Again, it's typically advertised around March, April time, and applications are currently open for that position. And again, you can go to our website and find details of that particular position. Just note the closing date is 11th of April. So what would you do if you joined us here at APEC? Well, we do research and we do a lot of publications and presentations. So you will be helping with a whole range of activities, beginning with maybe a literature review, looking at other reports on a particular topic. There will be a lot of data collection, downloading data from CanSim, accessing data from other sources, a lot of analysis that we do in Excel, which would be our primary vehicle, although we also do some work with Stata and other evaluation tools. We do a lot of work with industry, government officials, and other researchers. So again, talking to experts in the field, trying to find out exactly what's happening on a particular topic or a particular industry. And we often do, as part of our research reports, interviews with business and government officials. So again, you often get to help, particularly the internship, with some of those. And because everything we do is published, you will be doing a lot of writing, preparing tables and charts for our regular publications, as well as our research reports, and helping the more senior staff prepare for our Outlook conferences, our major projects, and other paid presentations that we do. Because you get to work on a whole range of experience, we've had a very good feedback from our previous interns that have worked here at APEC, and you see pictures of some of our recent interns, where they are currently working, and some of their feedback. So again, you get to work on the whole research process, from the data collection, the analysis, the publishing and presentation of those reports, which helps develop the full range of skills. You get to work on a whole range of different economic topics working in APEC, and again, the particular research project might vary from year to year. And of course, we're very much interested in helping you develop your career as you move, join with APEC and move on into other organizations. So what are we particularly looking for? Certainly one of the key things is someone with a strong grasp of economic principles. When we do interviews, we often find people have taken a lot of economics courses, but we ask them about a different topic, and sometimes they're really struggling to be able to take some of the economic principles they've heard in some of their core classes and apply those same principles to an area that maybe they're not as familiar with. But someone who really understands economics, some of the key principles, some of the key ways of thinking, that is something that's very important in the work that we do. We also need someone with very good data skills, someone who works accurately, who can work very proficiently in Excel, who can look at data and sees when they have a calculation that says 105%, realizes that maybe when everything should be in the 0 to 5% range, that number must be wrong for some reason, and be able to recognize that and make some judgments on that. So someone who's really numerate and capable working with those type of data capacities. Because everything we do is published, we want someone with very strong writing skills, someone who can write very clearly and succinctly for non-economists, so being able to understand when to use technical and non-technical language. And again, being able to work with other staff, being able to work with outside stakeholders, other oral communication skills are also very important. Because we have an internship program that is designed to develop people for careers, we do certainly look for people who are very keen to pursue a career as an economist. In particular, if you've got work experience as a research assistant, as a summer work experience, although we don't require that for our positions, that certainly is a very strong signal that we take as someone who's got some relevant experience and is also very keen to pursue this career. And again, finally, because everything we do is focused on Atlantic Canada, someone who has a strong interest in working in, learning more about, supporting this region's economy is something that's very important. And for our internship position, certainly if you have a bilingual capacity, that would something be also a specific value to us. So hopefully that gives you a good sense of who we are, what we do, what we look for, and the types of positions that are available for people coming out of graduate programs here in the region. So that was all that I wanted to say about APEC. I am now going to hand over to David Amiro, and he is going to talk from his perspective at the Bank of Canada. Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Let me just see if I am. Can everybody see the presentation? Okay, look, I appreciate the opportunity to do this presentation for you all. First thing I'll say is, let me just see if I can move these slides. Yeah, there we go. So what I'll say first of all is that I get to lead a dynamic team of 4 people who work in the Halifax Regional Office. So people who get to live and work in Halifax, but are integrated into the Canadian Economic Analysis Department. So we are at the heart of the monetary policy function for the Bank of Canada. And that means that we get to live in Atlantic Canada, but make a strong contribution to the analysis that goes into the monetary policy decisions that take place at the Bank of Canada. For example, in the January Monetary Policy Report, some of the analysis of the Monetary Policy Report is our quarterly assessment of how the Canadian economy is doing and where we see our forecasts going. Some of the analysis in that document was actually produced here in Halifax. I've had research assistants that have joined my team here in Halifax, and within weeks have been writing monitoring emails for the governor or one of the members of governing council. So there's definitely an opportunity to make a difference and put your mark on an important part of the Canadian economy. So I'll sort of continue there by talking a little bit about the fact that we have regional offices, so not just in Halifax, but also in Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver. Most of the employment, though, however, is in Ottawa, as I'm sure you would probably assume. So 90% of the jobs are based in Ottawa. We have a small regional office also in New York for financial policy functions. I will talk a little bit about what we do here in the Halifax Regional Office. I would say we probably split our work half, sometimes half, and sometimes the current analysis is a little bit more than half, maybe 60 or 70%. Our single biggest deliverable or kind of flagship product is the Business Outlook Survey, which is a quarterly face-to-face survey we do with firms across Canada. And we actually, so we would wind up doing the visits for Atlantic Canada. So we're flying off to Newfoundland, New Brunswick, PEI, to do the visits. We have a 4-week window where all of the visits have to be done by. So we do have a very intense period where we're on the road, but then we follow that up with a period where we're able to sort of do more work kind of in the office, doing research and other things. So the boss has been around for almost 20 years. So we have 20 years of firm level data. And over that period, each regional office has developed an expertise. So I'll talk a little bit about the expertise we've developed here in Halifax. So we are the place or the region that's been given the task of analyzing all of the credit condition questions that we have in the Business Outlook Survey. So that is very much the area of our focus in terms of analysis of the BOSS results that we get. Gobs of data every quarter, and our job is to analyze that credit data, which means that in 2008, when the financial crisis happened, we were the place that Governing Council turned to get information, real-time information on how firms were reacting to conditions in credit markets. More recently, we've also done work on how the commodity price shock that we saw in 2015 and 16 in Canada was impacting firms. How was it affecting the decisions to invest, their decisions to hire, their wage setting decisions, and all of those types of things. We also do sectoral and regional monitoring, and we are the eyes and ears, and sometimes, as today is the case, the mouth of the Bank of Canada in the region. The research part, or the kind of the long-term research part, is a fairly unique part of working at the Bank of Canada. There's not a lot of other places where you are an applied economist that is also expected to do work in a fairly rigorous way on research topics that are almost at the point where they're getting into the almost academic sphere. So I've done work on price and wage rigidities in the past. More recently, my staff and I have built a center of excellence around labor market analysis, migration trends, and how migration trends in Canada respond to commodity price shocks. So we've just recently published an article in the Canadian Journal of Economics on building a gravity model that looks at migration across the Canadian regions using census data. We are also in the process of developing more expertise on foreign direct investment, gasoline markets, and further work on credit analysis. So working at the bank or getting a job at the bank starts with university recruitment. So every September we go out to, I think last year we made presentations in 7 or 8 schools, St. Mary's, Dalhousie, I can't remember, a few other ones now. But we hire anywhere between 40 to 60 economists every year. Typical view for bachelors is there is an interview that's done by Skype. Same thing with master's students, PhD students. We do the first round of interviews in person. A second round is usually done. In the case of RAs, there are sometimes cases we do second interviews, usually by Skype, but sometimes people are invited in to chat face-to-face. Just to give you a bit more of a sense also, in terms of the type of positions available, bachelor's degrees typically are 1-year term with a possibility of extensions. We have hired, I think in the last few years, I've hired 5 or 6 research assistants on these term positions. We have research assistants in all of the regional offices across Canada, so you wouldn't be limited to just looking at opportunities here, but in Ottawa, but also in other parts of the country, if that's of interest to you. Regular full-time work is pretty much as an economist or as an analyst is for masters and PhD students. So just to end, I want to talk a little bit about what makes a good economist. I've been working with economists, working as an economist, and hiring. I've probably hired several dozen economists in the past over my 25-year career as an economist. And there are things that sort of strike me as very important. I think quantitative skills is typically usually at the top of the list, but increasingly, everybody's got good quant skills. And so the differentiation for me is somebody who's got strong communication skills, somebody that can master the art of writing a 4-page note that has to have everything in it, but not anything more than what is absolutely required. I think economists suffer from giving a lot of data, but not coming to bottom lines. So I look for people who can come to bottom lines. So I don't want a two-handed economist. I want a person who can make recommendations to me. Complementary knowledge is great. Business, finance, history, sociology, all of those things, computer science, and even other disciplines are often very complementary to getting a job as an economist. Be inquisitive, be creative, and also build a network. I think one of the things I want to leave with everybody here is that economists don't have a monopoly on good ideas. It's important to build a network, and I think the AAAE, the event we're talking about today, the people on the telephone are all part of my network. I'm part of their network. It's important that we build networks among economists, but also outside the discipline. I'll leave that the rest, and I'll thank you very much for your time. And I've got a few web links here if any of you are interested in the Monument Policy Report, the Business Outlook Survey, or you want more information about careers at the bank.
Well, thank you, David, and we'll be moving straight to Thomas. I know one of you has just asked whether you could see one of David's earlier slides. If there's time, we'll go back to that, but just to let you know, we are recording this, so you will be able to go back and see those slides in your own time. But now I'd like to move on to Nova Scotia, and we'll have Thomas Storing from the Provincial Department of Finance. Thank you. Over to you, Thomas.
Thanks, David, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen so you can have a look at my there we are. So my name is Thomas Storing. I'm the Director of Economics and Statistics at the Nova Scotia Department of Finance and Treasury Board. I have a team of about 6 people here, and we provide the majority of the economic analysis services that are used by the provincial government here in Nova Scotia. I'll talk to you a bit about today about the work that we do and the duties that the economists on my team perform in those, but hopefully I'll also talk a little bit more about how economists work in the provincial government more generally, and kinds of skills that we most value when we're hiring economists to work for the province of Nova Scotia. So, first of all, taking a look at the opportunities for economics graduates in Atlantic Canada, I'm going to speak most specifically about my experiences here with the province of Nova Scotia. I've worked elsewhere, and I have worked as an economist in the private sector as well. From the perspective of provincial governments, we're relatively small jurisdictions, and so unlike the Bank of Canada or, say, large departments of the federal government, we have limited call for the sort of full-time economic analysis positions who practice nothing but economics. There's a group here at the Department of Finance and Treasury Board here in Nova Scotia, as well as a group with our Department of Labor and Advanced Education. Those are really the only concentrations of dedicated economic analysis. There are, however, economists who are working either on their own as economists in particular departments, or they happen to be economists who are performing other duties for the government. So we're consolidated in a few departments. If you should find yourself as an economist working in what I call one of those outlying departments, Department of Energy, Department of Environment, Natural Resources, you can find that, and this is my own advice to you, you can find that actually it can be a bit lonely to be the only economist working in a group of people who aren't economists. And that's why it's really important to maintain your links with the rest of the profession, whether that's the other economists that you would find working in your larger organization, but even the other economists working around the region. And an organization like the Atlantic Association of Applied Economists is really a great way for you to keep up your connections, build your network, as the two people before me have said. And so I'd really encourage you to participate in the AAAE, because you can make a lot of good connections there that will serve you as you develop your career and as you do your work over the years. I would say, though, that although in the provincial government there may not be as many jobs that are dedicated to pure economic research and analysis, that doesn't mean to say that there isn't call for economists. In fact, economists are very valued because they bring a skill set that is applicable in a lot of functions, even though it may not be the practice of pure economics such as you're having your training in right now. So we find lots of people who are doing research and statistical analysis in healthcare, in community and social services, in education, in the environment, who are able to bring the skills of an economist to bear on those particular issues. And some of the functions that they would carry out would be research in their specific subject area, planning, program administration, and policy. Economics is a great training for these things, and it's valued by a lot of departments. So I'd encourage you to make sure, as you're doing your job search and building your career, that you cast your net pretty widely. There are possibilities for working in consulting roles outside of in Atlantic Canada, outside of the governments, but these are fairly limited. In the private sector, there are a few opportunities, but there's, again, you need to be very flexible in order to work in those kinds of roles. One of the cautions I will offer to you, and this is as a slightly older economist to newer economists, is that we've had this trend towards open data, which has been great. It's made all the information that is collected by governments widely available. And that widespread access to data means that everybody thinks that they can perform economic analysis regardless of whether they have background. And while I say that economics is good training and background for performing a lot of analytical functions, there's a lot of other backgrounds that don't really give good foundation in economic analysis. And we really need to work hard on being rigorous and honest about the practice of economics, and that it's very important that we bring the full suite of insight that we have as economists to these questions, and not allow those outside our profession to practice economics without a license. What do we do on a day-to-day basis here at the Department of Finance? The big thing that we do is that our task is to explain how economic conditions and demographic conditions affect the provincial government. And so we report on the economic and demographic news pretty much. We do it every day. And we're explaining how those conditions affect the government's policy choices, but we also explain how the government's policy choices affect economic conditions. They're very interested in both. We spend a lot of time doing economic and demographic forecasting. What is the outlook for provincial population and economic conditions? And you'll see a lot of our work, as both of the other two Davids have mentioned before. A lot of our work ends up being published in written form, and you can see that if you take a look at things like our budget assumptions and schedules document, which you can see here. We do a fairly extensive review of what's gone on in Nova Scotia over the past year and what our expectations are for the coming year. You'll see the latest revisions to that coming in a few weeks from each of the provinces. It's already come from New Brunswick. We would also do analysis of things like what are the economic implications of stimulus investments or changes to the tax regime. We do a lot of economic impact analysis, so this is a detailed examination of how government decisions about programs, policies, investments would affect the Nova Scotia economy. And this tends to take the form of analysis using our models and documenting the economic impacts. And this is this is an example where it's particularly important that we're explaining our results to non-economist audiences, because these are really, really vulnerable and susceptible to misinterpretation. You may have seen some of our work done for Nova Scotia Business Inc. on their investments, or Trade Center Limited, the recently announced Center for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship here in Dartmouth. So economic impact analysis is some of the work that we do. Current economic analysis. Here, and this is something we specialize in the Department of Finance and Treasury Board, we report on economic and demographic conditions, not only in Nova Scotia, not only in Canada. We cover the US, the European Union, the United Kingdom, and Japan. We want to be able to put the economic conditions in context of what's going on around the world. We do that every single day. We haven't missed a day in 5 years. And it's really important that we get that out there, because we want to get it in the hands of the media to ensure that that information is fully and accurately reported and put in proper context. You may see some of that in our daily stats webpage, as well as in the emails that we send out on the daily stats. This happens to be today's. We covered the unemployment rates in Europe, and you can see how they compare against what is happening in Nova Scotia as well as in Canada. Likewise, we took a look at the latest results on inflation in Japan. And again, you can see what's driving it and how it compares with the situation in Nova Scotia and in Canada. We are the statistical focal point for Nova Scotia, so we provide feedback to Statistics Canada about what's happening in the local economic situation and whether what Statistics Canada is delivering is consistent with our priorities. And we do a lot of consulting for other departments where they don't necessarily have economic expertise, helping them find and analyze data and explain how their initiatives affect the economy. So we do a lot of reports and advice to other departments. Some of you may be familiar with the One Nova Scotia Commission, the IVANY report. We provided a lot of insight and information to them. What are some of the things that we're looking for? Obviously, good training and technical skills. You have to have them or be able to develop them. We don't anticipate that anybody is going to arrive at our doorstep coming in as an employee and be able to have all the technical skills needed right off the bat. You have to be able and willing to learn new skills and be flexible, particularly to work in a small jurisdiction. Some people are kind of surprised when they come to work in the province that we're not a group of econometricians who are building and running new models every single month. In fact, we spend a whole lot more time doing more basic analysis than you might be familiar with in an academic setting. It tends to be, though, that you've got to be flexible, unspecialized. You have to be able to adapt yourself to new tools and techniques. We really value people who have initiative, who can identify opportunities to add greater value through economic analysis and appeal to our clients, who are generally not economists. You're hardly ever going to talk to anybody outside of your sphere who is an economist. We need people who can take the initiative to identify and respond to emerging problems and see opportunities that are out there. Like the others, we need excellent writing, presentation, and documentation skills. I would say that these are almost more important than the technical skills, although each one is not as valuable without the other. It needs to be accessible, and it needs to be compelling to non-economist audience, and has to be able to withstand critique, particularly because there are those out there who have biases and their own self-interests, and integrity is a really important part of our work. We have to give objective and highly credible analysis. Something we value, given that we produce written work every single day, is speed and the ability to produce in high volume. And you have to have credibility and integrity. You have to be unafraid to give answers that your clients or your audience may not want to hear. I will close it off there, and I think I'm handing it over to Todd now.
Thank you, Thomas. That's great. And so we'll move from Nova Scotia to New Brunswick. And if Todd is still on the line, we might have lost Todd. I know he had to go to a meeting.
No,
Todd, you still there? Okay, over to you, Todd. Great. Go ahead, Todd.
Okay, thank you. Well, first off, I didn't bother putting together a number of slides. I think it would be a very similar story to what you heard from both Davids as well as Thomas. But I'll give you a little bit of context with regards to New Brunswick. Similar to Nova Scotia, small province, which means there's a fairly small economics community. Within the provincial government, I would say 98% of the economists that are working in government are working within the Department of Finance, within fiscal policy. We do have tax policy economists, fiscal policy and federal provincial fiscal relations, and as well as economic and statistical analysis. Outside of that, we have a couple of economists that would be in post-secondary education, training and labor, and health. What you see is a lot of departments that do come to you looking for that economic advice and guidance. And kind of to one of the last points that Thomas raised is certainly sometimes when you have those conversations with them and you provide that economic feedback, sometimes you're telling them a story that they don't want to hear. In our world, really, it's very much about speaking truth to power. So you can imagine that when you're doing a forecast for the province of New Brunswick and calling for a decline in employment for the third or fourth or fifth year, it doesn't necessarily go over all that well when you're speaking to some of your decision makers. But that's a critical component of the job. Because we're a small shop, it does mean that you're very close proximity to the deputy minister. You have access to the minister as well. You will be brought to briefings with both the deputy minister and the minister. Regular and direct contact as well with the assistant deputy minister. It's not a shop where you have to go through me to talk to the assistant deputy minister. One of the differences in New Brunswick compared to some of the commentary that Thomas had made is we have experienced a fair bit of turnover fairly regularly, particularly with younger employees that do come in, usually a 2 or 3 year period. Then as they get known by the federal government or whatever, they tend to move on to greener pastures, so to speak. Certainly results in a very good and very strong training ground because you get to experience and get exposed to a lot of different areas of the economic profession. Parce que le Nouveau-Brunswick est une province bilingue, des capacités de parler dans les deux langues officielles, c'est certainement vraiment apprécié. Mais la plupart du travail, c'est en anglais. So most of the work that we do have, it is done in English. When we do have translation capacity, but because of the technical nature we have, we do side-by-side comparisons to make sure that the translator is understanding the meaning, understanding the technical nature of the numbers that we are speaking about. In terms of key products that we do really is follow through the budget process. You'll be involved in pretty much every step of the budget process, right from the budget, the economic outlook. You would be potentially writing that. Quarterly reporting, public accounts. Basically, you start with the budget and end with the public accounts, and everything in between you'll be working on. In terms of opportunities outside of economics, as mentioned a couple of times, it's really if you look at the policy analyst type positions across government, that's where there are other opportunities as well. And certainly I would be delighted to see more economic thinkers working across government. A lot of times you'll see accounting expertise or other policy type expertise, or even in some respects lawyers and whatnot. To give you a bit of an idea of some of the things that we've done, in terms of the diversity of things that we get to look at, I just, as I was preparing for this meeting, reflecting on this week alone, this morning talking about carbon pricing. When I leave here, I'll be in a meeting with the minister discussing pay equity. Yesterday, we were meeting with the credit rating agency on defending our fiscal plan and our economic outlook. Electoral reform, the report that released today, we did some work on that. Economic impact analysis on immigration, possibility of a February holiday in New Brunswick. Broader issues, HST, Canada pension. Those are just a few of examples, and that happened this week. And so you can come in and you would expect that you may be working on something particular this week. That can change fairly quickly. So you become very quickly, and I think it was highlighted by Thomas that you don't necessarily want to be, you want a specialist, because you could be working on anything on any given day. Softwood lumber is another good example. It depends very much on the issues. And I think that's kind of a bit of a high-level summary of the world and how we operate in New Brunswick. And I'll hand it over to Nigel.
Thank you, Todd. So we've hopefully getting a good sense of what's happening. I will remind you, we will be using the chat feature for questions that you can find on your screen, so I encourage you to use that. And hopefully we'll have time to ask questions for Todd, because I know he has to leave for his meeting soon. But right now we'll go over to Nigel in PEI. Welcome, Nigel. Nigel, we just need to unmute your phone first.
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Great, thank you.
Well, following that, I'm not sure I have a whole lot more to add in terms of what an economist in the Department of Finance and a provincial government does. PEI does all of those things as well. While PEI is small, we have the same responsibilities, authorities, and requirements for the same analysis and decision makers here in the government of Prince Edward Island. We are a small group of professionals. There are 4 in the office here, covering a very broad mandate within the Department of Finance. But I'd have to say I spend probably about half my time dealing with issues and advising the various departments and agencies of government. I think through the run of a year, there's not an agency or department that we don't interact with and have substantive discussions about policy issues that emerge in their sphere. So while we're housed in the Department of Finance, we are very much kind of a centralized resource for government broadly. And that covers economic policy, social policy, and fiscal policy, which each of those 3 domains have, like, there's not really much that doesn't fit under one of those umbrellas, and all of those areas are supported by data. So data analysis, synthesizing data, and drawing conclusions are an important function of an economist in government. I think Todd put it nicely when with such a broad mandate and cutting across the whole of the government structure. The work at a small provincial government is not one of kind of boring monotony of the same thing every day. I don't think there's been a day where I kind of said to myself, going in to do that same thing day after day after day. It's very dynamic. Being able to kind of adjust to whatever the question emerges from is being able to draw kind of a quick analysis on issues as they emerge. In time, I should say we have, unfortunately, and perhaps it was a timing issue. Being putting the ad out mid-December and closing in early January. We didn't get a pool of candidates, hopefully anticipating going back out with a maybe leave it at that and say, yeah, keep the eyes open on potential opportunity here in PEI. I do think the organization, and we intend to do that again. So in terms of the network, if you're continue to be plugged into this organization, you have an chance to see this ad when it comes out. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nigel. And certainly if you send that ad to me, I can make sure that goes to all the departments in the Atlantic Canada. Certainly we have contacts with them, so we can certainly make sure they're aware of that. So that concludes our formal presentations. We would like to now take up some opportunities for you to ask your specific questions, and we can respond to those either individually or collectively. I know Todd has to leave in a few moments, so I know I've got one question in that will be fairly general that the panelists may have seen on the chat, a function about other hard skills. But I just want to see if anyone using the chat feature has a specific question for Todd Selby, just because we're about to lose him in a few minutes to go to his meeting. So again, if you want to use the chat feature, you should find it towards the top of your screen. If you just hover over and send a chat to all panelists, or just send it to David Chaundy specifically, we should be able to take that question. So I'll just give you Todd's got about 5 minutes if you have questions, and then we have to let Todd go. So the question that's come in while we were just waiting for anything specific to Todd is, what are some of the hard skills other than economic analysts, econometrics and coding that aspiring economists should develop? I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that specifically. David, Amiro?
Yeah, I'd say any hard skills or soft skills are all going to be valuable. It's all about the package you bring to the interview. When we hire RAs or economists, we are looking at very much the full package. So if you're coming in with a BA, an honors BA with strong econometrics, strong theory courses, but you've also done really well, 2 or 3 really good marks in history, to me that's a signal that you can write. So those are the types of things that the people that are seeing, that you saw here today, are looking for. We're looking for information about the skills you can bring. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. I had an opportunity to have a friend of mine who's a geologist and an economist. Those are very specialized skill sets, and it allows him to become very specialized and very much an expert that can offer both perspectives. An accounting background, a finance background, a business background, all very useful. A statistics or computer science, a psychology, a data analytics background, all very important. But beyond that, I think you have to be able to signal to employers that what you're very good at. So having done a history course is not a bad thing, it's an excellent thing. And having gotten decent marks in a history course or a political science course or an English course or a French course is signaling to an employer that you have built up some of those skills. There are other soft skills that you should also build up. In addition to your university education, you should be trying to take a course on how to become a good presenter in front of people. It's not easy to do that. You know, you're looking at yourself and you're saying, you know, maybe I'm not going to be a great presenter. That's the type of thing you need to deal with right away. You have to get good presentation skills. You have to be able to, as economists, we have to be able to tell people about things that are completely intangible. We can't see markets. We can't lift them. We can't drop them on our foot. Yet we have to be able to explain what's going on. And that's something that comes with strong communications attributes.
Great, thank you, David. We had a question just around how do you prepare yourself to become an economist? And Todd, I know you've got to leave shortly. Was there anything you wanted to say on that? And then we've got a specific question for Thomas on where positions are hiring, and then a question on programming language that we'll take. Todd, anything on about how to prepare yourself to be an economist other than what we've already shared?
Well, I think David really has hit a lot of the key things. Certainly, if you're graduating with a master's degree in economics, I have a degree of comfort that you have the technical skills that I'm looking for. So what it boils down to then is kind of getting into those soft skills. Can you take those technical ideas and those technical concepts and present them to a non-technical audience? What are your communication skills like? Can you take something that lives in a theoretical world and translate it into the implications of a real world scenario? Can you talk about things where you may not necessarily have data available to provide you with some insights and answers? Can you tell a story? And in fact, that's probably one of the big things I would say is that when I talk to a lot of the newer economists, when I talk to my colleagues, it's very much we're glorified storytellers, and we use numbers and a lot of different techniques in order to tell a story that makes sense to people who are non-technical.
Thank you, Todd. I'd just like to go to Thomas. I know there's a question about when and where you advertise your vacancies. You just need to unmute your phone, Thomas.
Sorry about that. I'll answer that question, and I'll also address a couple of the other things that had just been mentioned. The specific question was jobs.novascotia.com doesn't have any openings for economists, and there's only one that mentions economics. And that's because, as Todd had mentioned, the province of Nova Scotia, we have very low turnover amongst our economists. The people who come here to work as economists really like it, I guess. We tend to have really, really strong and long retention for our economists. We don't necessarily have a lot of openings specifically for economists. But when you look at job advertisements in Nova Scotia, you'll see things like research and statistic officer or policy analyst. And even if those jobs don't necessarily mention economics explicitly, economics is considered to be a very good background for those positions. So I would encourage you, even if you don't see economics in your search, to apply for those positions, because certainly the skills that you develop as an economist will be valuable in those roles, and they're good ways to build your career. And if you may find that they may take you off in a different direction than economics, but economics will always be part of how you approach those problems. There were a couple of other questions I think that others had answered about, or had asked about how to prepare to become an economist, what technical and hard skills should you develop. And I'll be honest, I think I'll echo what others have said. Compelling written analysis is critical, and that does not come from deepening your knowledge of and sophistication with programming tools, your capacity to handle large amounts of data. In some respects, those skills can end up being wasted if you're not able to create a compelling story and advice for your clients. So I would encourage most of you, and I think Todd said it well, if you've graduated from a graduate program here in Atlantic Canada, we know you've got the skills. They're good programs here. And the same would apply for a lot of the honors baccalaureate programs as well. But what you need to develop is those written skills, and that's something you can practice whether you're working or not, and you certainly look for opportunities to practice it as you build your career. Thanks.
So we've got a few more questions coming in, and certainly if Nigel wants to jump in on any of those. Certainly one of the questions that has come in is from an international student asking, can they apply to any Canadian government jobs after graduation? Just to let you know, our intern that we hired last September was an international student. He was finishing his master's. He applied and was on a postgraduate work permit for us. He has now just left and actually will be going to work with Todd in New Brunswick. So certainly there are opportunities, but I'd let those who are in the federal and provincial governments just speak about international students applying to work for them. I don't know if Nigel or David or Thomas, you want to pick up on that?
I have nothing really to add. I think we definitely hire we hire quite a few. I know for a fact international students at the bank. To be able to work at the bank, you have to pass a fairly high level of security clearance. But given that that's not an issue, we definitely take in many students every year that have very specialized skill sets are typically the type of thing we have to go abroad to find if we're really looking and struggling to find somebody in Canada. So definitely an option.
Questions come up around an honours degree program and whether an honours degree is required or an advantage for the bachelor positions. Certainly we only tend to recruit people with a master's degree, so we're looking for people with strong backgrounds in economics at the undergraduate level, but I don't know, Thomas or Nigel or David, if you have any views on an honours program specifically.
I'll offer, David, I think it's a matter of what's available. There are quite a few candidates who do have, particularly people you're not just competing against people from Atlantic Canada, you're competing against people who are mobile and willing to go anywhere in the world. And so we find ourselves, when we do have competitions, that we are quite well supplied with people who have master's degrees, some with doctorates even. And so, you know, it's not a matter of saying that someone with a bachelor's degree without honors in economics couldn't do the job. It's more that it's that, you know, when screening and looking at candidates, it's going to be those who've got deeper education that are going to go to the top of the list for interview.
So in our case at the bank, we do hire bachelor students as research assistants, but they are only hired for 1-year contracts, as I mentioned, with an extension of potentially an extra year. It is the case that if you apply to the bank with an honors degree, you're more likely to get part of that initial screening that would get you to the first interview. So if you don't have an honors degree, that doesn't mean you can't do the type of work that some of the others have described, policy analyst positions. There are other positions. If you have a bachelor's degree in economics and you have a chemistry background, and there's a person who's looking for that type of skill set as a policy analyst, like Department of Energy, that might be really useful. But in terms of being a professional economist, I would say it's difficult to get in the door anywhere with anything less than an honors degree. And even at the bank, when we specifically only hire bachelors for RA positions. It's 99% of the time, those would be honors degrees in economics.
Thank you, David. So I think people just need to understand, if you're an accountant, you might graduate with some degree and then do your professional training. For economists, a master's degree is typically viewed as kind of the entry-level professional qualification. So again, we hire summer students, but it's just a short-term position, just as David might hire research assistants. But generally, if you're looking for a full-time permanent position in economics, a master's degree is what you're going to need. We have another question which I will maybe respond to about Newfoundland and Labrador. We have panelists from 3 of the maritime provinces. We don't have a current director from the AAAE who's a part of the association at the moment. We did have someone. There's certainly the similar opportunities in Newfoundland and Labrador in terms of their finance department. They have at least in the past, they've had a fairly strong finance and statistical division. They would do much the same analysis that the other provincial finance department people do. Again, they have opportunities also in some of the other departments, although they tend to be fewer and far between. So again, I think the opportunities in Newfoundland and Labrador are very similar. So hopefully that answers that question. It would be pretty much the same as what you've seen from the other provinces in terms of the types of work available and when those opportunities come up. And certainly you can approach the Newfoundland Finance Department directly. Again, because of their fiscal situation, they might be in a cutback mode. So again, that might impact the types of opportunities or the number that might be available going forward. So we have a few minutes left. I just want to see if there's any more questions that people want to do through the chat feature. Any questions you don't feel we've fully covered? So there's a question, and David, I don't know whether, I know you're not Finance Canada, questions that come up about opportunities in Finance Canada. I know that we have seen 3 of our interns move to Finance Canada after working with us. That's kind of been their entry into Finance Canada, but I'm not as familiar with the other federal recruitment. David, Amira, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I'll also say that I've had research assistants that I've hired in the last few years that have worked really well at the bank here in Halifax. And after they were done, they basically went off to Finance Canada. So I do know that Finance Canada is a very big hirer of economists in Ottawa. And I know it's a great place to spend a few years if you want to build a resume. I am not absolutely sure about, I think the question is about how many, what the intake is every year. I'm not aware of that intake. Apologize for that.
Yeah, and again, we just want to let you know that this is just a sampling of the potential employers. There are other departments, there are other federal departments, whether it's through ACOA, whether it's through the Innovation, Science and Economic Development nationally, whether it's through another federal department. There are other employers, as we've mentioned. We're not able to necessarily speak to them or profile them at this time. Nigel, I just wonder if I can throw this next question to you, a question that's come up about, have you ever been frustrated because you've had to make an argument against someone in government who were way too confident in their potentially wrong view? Do you have any examples of that you can share where you have had to convey to someone who's got a very strong opinion within government and had to maybe come at them with some analysis that maybe had to confront them in that way? Anything you can share on that?
Go ahead, Nigel.
That's, I guess I'm unmuted here. I think that's part of the job. We do rely on kind of an evidence-based piece of analysis, and if you look at the evidence or the data, a little bit of logic and intuition, sometimes it does tell you a completely different story. You let the data and the logic and intuition tell the story, and usually reasonable people can come to reasonable conclusions.
I think the question, if I'm reading it though, is that sometimes there's unreasonable people and they end up coming to unreasonable conclusions. And it's not necessarily that they're unreasonable. It's that you know, we're all conditioned to want to find an answer that we want to hear, and the Inquirer is absolutely right that we often end up finding ourselves in a position where economists tend to have a bit of a trump card, and I hesitate to use that choice of words. That means something different now, doesn't it? We often have a stronger hand because of the quantitative analysis that we've done, and it tends to be fairly rigorous. And I've certainly had the experience, and I'm not going to share any specific details of, you know, lending the perspective of a quantitative analysis to somebody's idea, and yeah, it does burst people's balloons. I will caution all of you, and this probably is something that my counterparts in the other governments can say as well, is that you have to let people down pretty gently. If you, if you break someone's balloon and you don't offer them an alternative, or, well, you know, that idea you have may not work out exactly the way that we'd hope, but try something else, try this different angle to it. You have to give them that alternative. You always have to speak in positive terms about what a better choice might be, not that's a bad choice. And I say that because if you get a reputation as the kind of person who tells someone they make bad choices, they're just going to stop asking you the question, and they're going to make the bad choices anyway. So you know, that's part of the art of economics, and some of those soft skills that are really just as important as being able to come to them with a strong technical answer to a question.
I think it's Nigel here. Just I think really the you know, in talking about people's proposals, you know, generally they are looking for thoughtful, thorough, sincere advice, and you know, it's our job to provide them with thoughtful, thorough advice. But in the end, it's just that. It's thoughtful, thorough, sincere advice, and we advise and they decide, and at the end of the day, we have to live with that. Providing them, you know, as part of a package, generally our system of government does provide information on the specific proposal. But also, provides ample room for further considerations, other recommendations, other directions that might be taken under consideration.
Well, thank you all. I think the questions have dried up, so we'll bring this to a conclusion. But hopefully you've all had a good sense of economists work on lots of different topics. We work in many different organizations, and we are not just sat in our offices running regression analysis all day. There's a whole host of skills that you as a potential economist working in these types of organizations need, whether it's communication skills, writing skills, briefing skills, different types of analysis. So hopefully you've got a better sense of that and some of the specific opportunities. So just to let you know, this session has been recorded. If you want to go back and revisit one of the questions, one of the slides that was shared earlier, you'll be able to do that. We will be sending that out to you within the next day or so. We will also be shortly sending you a survey. So this is the first time we have done this as an organization. So we do want you very much to respond. Just take the few minutes to answer that, a few questions, so we get some feedback as to how useful this is, or whether we might do it again. And we will certainly make sure this recording is available to anyone in your department who might want to look at this over the next year or so, who are looking for opportunities. So with that, I'd like to thank all my colleagues. I know Todd from New Brunswick's already had to leave, but thank you to Nigel in PI, Thomas here in Nova Scotia Finance, and David Amiro at the Bank of Canada. Thank you all for taking the time to participate. Thank you all for taking the time to watch, and enjoy your rest of your afternoon, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, gents. Appreciate it.